The boy sat on the cracked pavement, his bare feet dusted with the dirt of the day, a weathered guitar resting across his small frame. The strings were old, some nearly unraveling, but when his fingers touched them, they carried a sound that silenced even the noise of the busy Manila street. Under the weak glow of a flickering street lamp, he began to sing. His voice was raw yet hauntingly beautiful, a mixture of pain and hope that rose above the honking of jeepneys and the chatter of the crowd. Most people hurried past, eyes fixed on their phones or the ground, unwilling to notice the child pouring his soul into a song far older than he was. Now and then, someone tossed a coin into the rusted tin at his feet, the clang of metal echoing more loudly than the brief kindness behind it. The boy would nod gratefully, never breaking the melody. He wasn't singing for money alone. He sang to remember his father, who used to hum the same song on long nights when there was nothing to eat. He sang to comfort his mother, working long hours with tired hands that still managed to hold him with tenderness. Above all, he sang because the music gave him a reason to believe that life could be more than these streets. And though he didn't know it yet, his voice was about to travel farther than he ever dreamed, reaching hearts that would finally stop and listen. One humid evening, as the boy strummed the opening chords of Hotel California, the street around him seemed the same as always, vendors calling out, tricycles rattling past, strangers brushing by without a glance. But then, something different happened. A foreign tourist, backpack slung over his shoulder, stopped in his tracks. Instead of walking on like everyone else, he lingered, his eyes narrowing with curiosity as the boy's voice carried through the night. At first, the boy looked down, embarrassed. He was used to being ignored, or worse, shooed away. But this man wasn't moving. He wasn't rushing. He was listening. Really listening. The boy's voice grew steadier, stronger, as though the weight of being heard gave him courage. When the song ended, silence hung in the air before the tourist crouched down to the boy's level. He didn't drop coins into the tin. Instead, he smiled and said softly, "You belong on a stage, not the street." The word stunned the boy more than any gift could have. No one had ever told him he belonged anywhere but here. The man pulled out his phone, not just to record, but to ask questions, his name, his story, his dreams. For the first time, the boy spoke about them aloud, about wanting to share his music with the world. That night, under the street lamp's fading glow, a chance encounter planted a seed of possibility. A stranger's kindness had unlocked something the boy had almost forgotten, the belief that his voice mattered. The day arrived sooner than the boy ever imagined. With the help of volunteers who rallied after the tourist shared his story online, he found himself thousands of miles away from the streets he once called home. His guitar, cleaned and rest-wrung, was still the same companion, but everything else felt foreign, the towering stage, the sea of lights, the roar of the audience waiting. Dressed in borrowed clothes that hung a little loose on his thin frame, he stood at the edge of the spotlight, trembling. Backstage, he had whispered a silent prayer, clutching the wooden neck of his guitar as though it were an anchor. When his name was called, his heart pounded so loudly he feared it might drown out the music before he even began. But as he stepped forward and faced the crowd, something inside shifted. He closed his eyes and remembered the street lamp, the cracked pavement, and his mother's tired smile. This wasn't just a performance, it was his story. The first notes of Hotel California rang out, clear and unshaken. His voice, once lost in the noise of Manila traffic, now filled the cavernous hall. He sang with the same honesty that had once reached a stranger's heart, but now it stretched across 1,000 listening souls. Every lyric carried the weight of hunger, resilience, and hope, and as the song built, so did his courage. By the final chord, the boy was no longer trembling. He was soaring, carried not by luck, but by the belief that he finally belonged. For a heartbeat, the arena was silent. The final chord lingered in the air like a prayer, and the boy's chest heaved as he clutched his guitar tightly against him. He feared the silence meant he had failed, but then, a single clap rang out, followed by another, until the entire audience was on its feet. The sound grew into thunder, cheers rising, tears shining in the eyes of strangers who felt his story through every note he sang. One of the judges leaned forward, visibly moved, before slamming the golden buzzer with a decisive hand. In an instant, golden confetti rained down from the ceiling, swirling around him like falling stars. The boy froze, his small frame dwarfed by the glittering storm, until the realization sank in, he had done it. Tears streamed down his face as his knees buckled, and he sank to the floor, holding the guitar as if it were the only thing tethering him to reality. He wasn't crying for the fame or the applause, he was crying for his mother waiting back home, for the nights he had sung to an empty street, for the hunger that had once drowned out hope. All of it had led here, to this shining moment. The judges rushed forward to embrace him, their voices blurred by his sobs, while the audience roared with joy. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just a boy on the streets of Manila. He was a voice the world could no longer ignore. In the weeks that followed, the boy's story spread far beyond the competition stage. Clips of his golden moment circled the globe, millions replaying the sound of his voice, many moved not just by the music but by the life behind it. Messages poured in from strangers, teachers, nurses, taxi drivers, families, each one saying how his courage reminded them to believe again, how his song had reached them in ways words never could. Reporters asked him about dreams of stardom, of wealth, of fame. But when the microphone was placed before him, he shook his head with quiet sincerity. "What I want," he said, "is to build a shelter, so no child has to sing on the streets to survive." His voice trembled, not from fear this time, but from conviction. And in that moment, people saw more than a prodigy, they saw a heart bigger than his circumstances. Donations began to flow, not because of pity, but because people believed in the goodness he carried. The boy who once played under a flickering street lamp was now shining a light for others. His victory became more than a personal triumph, it became a promise, proof that kindness, no matter how small, could change the course of a life. And so, from the cracked pavement of Manila to the glittering stage of the world, his journey was never just about music. It was about humanity, the truth that one act of compassion can lift a soul from the streets to the spotlight, and in doing so, inspire millions to believe in hope again.